Okay, so the agenda for today's session is on the screen. As discussed, we'll be starting with some fundamentals of Node.js. Whether you actually code for the server-side stuff with Node.js or not, Node.js is still going to be important for multiple reasons because most of the client-side technologies also depend on the Node.js tooling for setting up the applications. Like if we talk about React or Angular or Vue.js or any other client-side libraries, they have their roots within Node.js. And practically, if there is no backend which is already in place and the team is comprised of mainly the front-end web developers who are well versed with JavaScript, can actually create the mocking services also uh, at the server side with the help of Node.js. And in fact, if they are very well qualified with JavaScript, they can actually use the complete Node.js platform to build the server side APIs as well. Right. So Node.js is a very powerful platform. Mainly the Node.js environment is used on the server side, but some tooling of Node.js can be used for setting up your client-side applications also, as we discussed. So the entire agenda for this session is revolving around this only. What is Node.js? What it does? Why it is important? How it works? And how the development can be done within it. Though we'll not be doing a lot of development using Node.js within the session, but we will try to understand the conceptual part of it so that wherever you feel that Node.js can be useful for you can actually think of using Node.js for those features, those modules. Okay, and then some packaging tools related to it. NPM is the main target that we will be actually focusing on. And this all involves setting up the machine for Node.js development. So that includes the installation of Node.js, setting up the Node project, and understanding of the Node.js environment, or practically it is runtime environment, and overall concept of package management. Though with NuGet, we already have some idea about the packages, what are packages, and why they are important, and how exactly the packages are used. For the JavaScript based applications, the package manager is Node Package Manager, and that is what we call as NPM. Okay, so let's get started with a small presentation here in order to understand the overall concept of Node.js.
Saket, very good
Yeah,
morning.
yeah, good morning.
So here today also we'll learn how to install the Node.js, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so in Visual Studio Code, can we try?
We can, no problem with that. So basically, Node.js is the
Oh, oh,
environment which
okay,
is
thank you.
done at the machine level, and the development, whatever you do, you have the choice of using any of the editor as you want. So it could be as simple as Windows Notepad
Right.
also, right? So in fact, for web
Oh,
development, the
okay,
front-end
thank you.
development, mostly VS Code is being used these days. Earlier, we used to go for the tools like Notepad++ or Sublime Text. Any rich text editors basically were there. But now Visual Studio Code brings in more power in addition to what these editors used to provide, right? So VS Code is something what we will be using. Even for React.js portion also will be using VS Code only. Visual Studio will be using only for the server side APIs, whatever we are going to build. Okay.
Yes, yeah, thank you.
Okay. So let's get started with the introduction to Node.js. Why Node.js is the first question to be answered. Node.js whatever it is, actually is based on JavaScript, right? Vanilla JavaScript, or what we call as vanilla JS. As now these days, there is a trend of giving some name to any JavaScript based implementation. So the original JavaScript implementation has got the name vanilla JS, means simple JavaScript. Okay. Now, why it is important to have a JavaScript based implementation for server side? If you remember, if you have worked with JavaScript, you probably might be already having some idea that JavaScript was created mainly for the client side development of the web applications to add more dynamic effects, dynamic features to your web content, whether it is website or web application. Am I right?
Yes.
And probably whatever work you have done, if you have not worked with Node.js, if you whatever work you have done with JavaScript must have been targeting the client side development only. Correct?
Yes.
Now, when it comes to the web development, does a single developer do the backend development and front end development from top to bottom? Probably not, because the skills required for backend development are different from the skills required for the front end development, right?
Correct.
So you might
Yes.
know few things as a backend developer, you might know few things about the front end development. Similarly, the front end developer might know few things about the backend development, but that knowledge might be just elementary. I mean, wherever you want to test few things, maybe the basic stuff you know, but to take it to the next level, probably you need to spend some time in learning the development on the other side. Yes.
Yes.
Now, what if I have a team which usually works on the front end application stuff and has become quite good in JavaScript? Complete understanding of JavaScript is there with them. I want to leverage their skills. Probably my backend team is suffering some, or it's suffering with some issues, or it's struggling, or maybe the number of engineers which I have in my backend team probably has gone down for some reason, right? All about business, all about market dynamics. I want my front end team to be involved in the back end development also. But the biggest challenge will be to get them ready for the back end development with some back end technologies like Java or .NET or something similar. Am I right?
Yes.
Why not utilize their existing skill set and equip them quickly with the new features which can be accommodated into their existing skill set only? Why not empower JavaScript to do the backend development also? Don't you think that will be a better idea? Because the learning curve in that case will be pretty small. They don't need to learn the programming. They don't need to learn the programming language. They just need to learn some new features. In that way, the time taken to learn the new features will be less compared to learning something entirely new. Yes or no?
Yes.
And my team can become equipped more quickly that way. Maybe a week's time and team is ready. Yes.
Yes.
So again, if we go into the history of JavaScript, the JavaScript already had some of the features which allowed it to be used on the server side as well. But it usually depended on some JavaScript engine or JavaScript interpreter being provided by the server. Probably it had the dependency entirely on the web server's capability. If the web server was supporting the JavaScript environment or JavaScript interpreter was built into it, then only the server-side JavaScript used to work. Correct? Plus, it was not very network oriented. It was not providing support for asynchronous programming on the server side, which has become a need in the modern day programming on the server side. We need all the services to be capable of working in asynchronous model. Yes or no? So that my entire implementation can be very, very scalable. Am I right?
Yes.
So these are the requirements which were put forward by the JavaScript developer community. So you can see on the slide, Node's goal at that time, I will say, I'll just change the tense over here. So Node's goal was to provide an easy way to build a scalable network-based programs. This is just a summary of what we just discussed a minute back. Yes or no?
Yes.
That's where the idea of having a completely JavaScript-based server-side framework or server-side implementation was put forward. It all started with this goal. The name Node.js was given later on. Understand? Who created Node.js and when it was introduced to the world? So it was created by Mr. Ryan Dahl in 2009. Before that, there was no existence of Node.js even as a term. Development and maintenance was sponsored by Joint, a small organization at that point in time. Licensing taken care of by MIT. Last released version, this may not be up to date. We can actually go to nodejs.org and see what is the last release version, right? Simply what we can do is open the browser. You can do that on your machine as well. Open the browser and go to nodejs.org. You can see what is the last released version. The long-term support last version is 18.18.0 and the current version is 20.7.0. Earlier, the case was like all the odd versions were the current versions and all the even versions were the long-term support versions, but recently it has changed. Okay, based on the features, what they are bringing in, the amount of features, they are actually changing the version numbers. So we cannot just find out whether it's a long-term support version or current version by looking at whether it is even or odd anymore. We need to see exactly on the Node.js official website whether the version I'm using is a long-term support or current. Current means more like beta and something which you can try, you can test, you can create POCs, but cannot use this current version for the production environment. For production environment, LTS version should be used. You can go with the latest LTS version in case if you're targeting modern features. Got my point? So complete
Yes.
history if you want to see and complete release schedule if you want to see, here you have the links. Release schedule is here. Let me open this. It just shows how the things are going on. Since Node.js 14 onwards, we can see the release schedule, right? And if I want to see the different versions which have been released till date, I just go to other downloads. So here I have some information about the latest stuff. I have the Windows-based installer, Mac OS installer. Then I do have the source code also, which I can download and compile as per my need to get Node.js environment set up. Usually this is something which is required on Linux machines. We do have Linux binaries, macOS installers, Windows installers. We do have the formal installer packages available over here, right? Now, other different versions, if you want to see the history versions, we do have something called as previous release. And here we have the complete history. Going in descending order. 20, then 19, then 18, right? And here, wherever there is some LTS release, under LTS, we have got some name to it. So these two I can see 19 and 20 are not the long-term support versions. They are just current versions. Till here, you can see clearly that all even versions were LTS versions and odd versions were current versions or experimental versions, right? So if you want to go beyond this, probably, okay, I can see that they have actually removed some older versions which have become unsupported now. Earlier, we used to see the Node.js version right from the first release. So here I can see we have it from 4.9.1 onwards, right? 1.x to 3.x. These have been removed from this list as at that point in time, the name of Node.js was not officially Node.js. It was called as io.js. Okay. So probably that could be the reason why they dropped it from here. Otherwise, it was visible here in the past. Okay, so let's keep this open and I'll just go back to the presentation. So last release is 18 dot something, right? LTS version if I talk about. It was completely based on Google's V8 or version 8 engine, JavaScript engine basically. And this version 0.10.31 itself had 99,000 plus number of packages. Practically, if you see the current version's number of packages in the documentation, it will be more than probably 1,20,000 or 1,30,000 packages. Number of packages keep on increasing with every release because new and new features continuously are being added with every release. Number of packages being increased means number of features being increased, number of library functionality being increased, making the overall Node.js very, very powerful. Understood? Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Some of the success stories where the Node.js has been implemented and used successfully. So we can see some big names like LinkedIn, PayPal, Groupon, Walmart, Yahoo, Uber, etc. Practically, what we understand with this is most of their server-side implementation or server-side APIs are implemented using Node.js only, right? And some of the observations made by these companies already being put over here. LinkedIn initially was uh, implemented on the server side with Ruby on Rails, which they migrated to Node. The number of servers which they had around 30 were cut down to just 3 servers. Still ended up running up to 20 times faster in some of the scenarios. And they're able to make the front end and back end mobile teams work in a combined manner or as a combined team because the technology platform being used by the front end and back end became the same, JavaScript. PayPal migrated from Java to Node, built almost twice as fast with fewer number of people, means number of team members were reduced. Number of requests per second being processed were doubled, and 35% decrease in the average response time was recorded. So these are some of the observations shared by LinkedIn and PayPal. These other organizations probably have not shared their observations. That's why it's not available anywhere, and that's why I didn't put that on the slide as well. But these are big players in themselves. PayPal handles lots of financial related stuff, right? It handles money, so it's a big one in itself. LinkedIn also is a very big platform, and their comments, their observations have some weight, good amount of weight, isn't it? So we get some motivation to at least have a look into the power of Node.js, right? With this. There were some other projects also available like Node.js. Some of them might be available even today. So Word.x, which was based on polyglot programming. Then Akka, which was based on Scala and Java. Tornado, which was completely driven by Python language. LibEvent, which was based on C language. Event Machine, which was based on Ruby, Ruby on Rails, right? But Node.js became much more popular because JavaScript was already a very, very widely used and adopted web programming language. So it got a lot of weightage just because of its simplicity and the adoption that it already had in the market. Got it?
Yes.
What Node.js is not. It's not just another web framework. It's not for the beginners. It's not for the multi-threaded programming. I mean, it doesn't target multi-threaded programming, though it might have some support for it, but that support is actually provided by the JavaScript itself, not the Node.js environment. So Node.js doesn't target multi-threaded programming. So it's quite advanced and not just another framework. It is much more than that. Understand?
Yes.
Now, if we talk about the desktop applications, the traditional desktop applications, are UI driven. You have some interface where an user can do certain actions, and then there is some background logic like the event handlers are wired up or hooked up, which automatically get triggered based on what user is doing, right? These interfaces used to be created with the help of Windows Forms, WPF, these are .NET technologies. Then the other technologies like JSwing or Java Swing, GTK, Qt, etc., and were dependent entirely on the operating system for their behavior. Typically, if I talk about Windows Forms and WPF, in the past, they were Windows only frameworks. Now with .NET 5 onwards, actually Windows Forms and WPF have become available for some of the non-Windows systems also with some restrictions. So still we can say that they are mainly targeting Windows. These were tightly coupled with their underlying operating systems. But the modern world actually has a different requirement. Whatever the UI we create, that should not be tied up to any specific system or any specific operating system. I should have a portable version of the application. Like there could be a simple requirement. I'm building a mobile application. I want that mobile application UI to be created only once. And the same UI I should be able to use on Android as well as Mac OS or iOS or whichever other mobile platform I have. I don't want to invest again and again to develop the same UI just because the operating system is different, because that affects my productivity, that affects my profits. Yes or no? If I keep on developing the UI for different operating systems in separate projects, I have another challenge to be faced. That is, whenever I plan to release updates, I have to work on the updates for all the versions of all the operating systems, and then I have to release them together. So continuous integration and continuous delivery can be highly impacted in negative manner. Yes or no? I believe everyone agrees on that, right? On the other hand, if we see the web user interfaces across technology, across platforms are pretty much standardized. The overall UI is created with the help of HTML, beautified using CSS, and for adding the dynamic effects, we use JavaScript. Yes or no?
Yes.
Before these languages and platforms, HTML, CSS, JavaScript became very powerful. We had some proprietary technologies like Adobe Flash, ActiveX. Then Microsoft had a technology of their own called as Silverlight for quite some time. But then came HTML5 and it changed the overall perspective. HTML5 with CSS3 with JavaScript being standardized with ECMAScript, ECMAScript made the core of the web user interface development itself very, very robust, very, very strong, and probably capable of handling all the business application development requirements, for which in the past we used to depend on the third-party proprietary technologies like what we discussed, Flash, ActiveX, Silverlight, etc. And practically, the browser developers realize that now the core web technologies have become very powerful and we need not depend or we need not support the third party plugin based environments like Flash, ActiveX, Silverlight, etc. So they declared that we will not support them in future. As on today, none of the browser supports Flash, none of the browser supports ActiveX, none of the browser supports Silverlight. So we can assume that the support for those technologies have been taken off and those technologies have died. Correct? Though they can be used even today as a standalone implementation, but a browser-based implementation is no more possible. Got my point?
So all
For
the
security
applications.
reasons, mostly the browser developers took this decision. Yeah, yeah, there
So
was a question.
yeah, so all the applications were developed in Silverlight.
Yeah,
Those all are been they are forcefully converted to the latest.
yeah. So some migration definitely was forced, whether it is from Silverlight to HTML5 and CSS3 and JavaScript, or it was to something else. Maybe
Mhm.
the server-side web development uh, got included. So every organization probably did their own research and picked up the replacement as per their project's requirement. Whatever
Mhm.
suited the project, they picked it up. So here I will not say it was migrated to HTML5 based implementation only. People were left with choices, whether you
Yes.
go with this way, this way, this way, or this way,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
But
Right.
they were forced to move away from these plugin based environments because browsers simply said, we will not support any plugins anymore for security reasons.
Okay.
Because browsers had the control on the behavior of plugin, but what code runs inside the plugin, browser never had the control on that. What if someone injects some malicious code into the code running inside the plugin? I mean,
Yeah.
malicious application is deployed. It can destroy the client machine, right?
Yeah.
That is the reason, that is the concern which was raised by most of the community developers. And which ultimately led to the downfall of the plugins on the web front. Understand?
Yeah, got
So even today we do have some sort of implementations which match with Silverlight and uh, Adobe Flash and ActiveX and all that, but they are now in more control of the browser itself. Browser can actually see what's going on inside the code. And if the browser detects some unwanted behavior, it can just block that plugin for that moment so that it can save the machine from being targeted. Understand?
So yeah, so the plugins which are available in the form of JavaScript library also falls in the
Those are
similar.
just JavaScript plugins, and the execution of that code is taken care of by the browser only. So browser knows what's going on. And that's what I'm saying. When browser knows what's going on, it can block the unwanted behavior any point in time. There are some policies which are there in the browser already. Sometimes the network administrators can create those policies also to allow or deny a certain type of behavior. Understand?
Okay, yeah, got it.
Plugins never gave the control to the browser. Plugin said that, okay, here onwards, we will take care. You don't interfere,
Okay.
right? So what goes on inside the plugin was never in the control of the browsers. JavaScript plugins are different. JavaScript plugins are JavaScript only. So they are controlled and executed by browser. So browser is in driver's seat all the time. Understand?
Yeah, yes, Saket, thank you.
Yeah. Now, for the applications which we had before 2009, most of the time the data was being generated on the server and was being transferred to the client and displayed by the browser. For that, we had some server-side technologies like ASP.NET, JavaScript, Java Server Pages or JSP, PHP, Django, Rails, etc. And then came the Node.js as well for server-side implementations to make it more compatible with the clients, because client and server both were in the same language, same environment. Understood? Then here we need to discuss about the REST pattern also, where REST stands for representational state transfer. One of the standard that has to be followed by the web services, so that you can say that my web service is actually compatible with all the programming languages, all the platforms, all the technologies with simple HTTP support that is required. The consumer just need to be aware of HTTP protocol and nothing else needed, right? Unlike .NET Remoting, Complus, unlike Windows Communication Foundation, unlike Java RMI or the Corba implementation, which were technology dependent and technology specific. Even this is unlike SOAP. SOAP were web services working on HTTP but required the awareness of the SOAP protocol on client and server both. And the SOAP protocol was heavily driven by some predefined XML schema, which used to make the message exchange little bulkier. REST says that my message should be as simple as possible and should be containing only the relevant information, only the data, and maybe some very basic information about describing that data. I mean, the metadata should be included and nothing more than that. No predefined schema should be there so that your client and server can be accommodated or can be programmed to understand whatever the kind of input they are receiving. Understand? That was a new standard which said that focus on the communication based on the basic HTTP behavior. Focus on the basic HTTP requests like get, post, put, delete, etc. whatever the data that is required to be transferred should not be maintained by the server at all. Each request should carry the data from client to server. Server works upon that and sends it back to the client. Client holds that data in its own memory, right? And then for the further request, if required, that data can be used. That's why we use the term called as representational state transfer. Every request represents the state and transfers it to the server. It was not a new technology. It was more of a standard, a specification, and targeting the architecture of the client server design. So that's why it is called as architectural style for client server. Got it?
Yes.
What were the goals of REST? Some of the goals we already discussed, but then let's go through this. General interface, which is actually connected to HTTP verbs, get, post, put, delete, and other options that we have, right? Scalability of the component interface so that it can actually handle whatever the load it is receiving on the server side and at the same time from variety of clients, regardless of which technology, which platform they have been implemented in. Then reducing the latency. The time gap between the request being dispatched and received on the server side, plus response being prepared on server, dispatched from server, and received on the client side. That is what we call as latency. So one of the goal of REST pattern was to reduce this latency because SOAP had a bulky messaging environment, bulky schema. It actually used to cause some considerable amount of latency, right? And then also this specification or guideline should be able to encapsulate the legacy systems as well, so that the legacy systems don't go obsolete immediately. So that was the need. And as I said, it actually focused on the basic HTTP communication based on HTTP verbs like get, post, put, delete, where get was assumed to be the request for downloading the data. Post was assumed to be the request for insert operation if we compare it with the database operations, CRUD operations. So get is read, post is insert, put is for update, and delete is for delete. That makes it very clear that what kind of request is going to the server and what is expected from it. Understanding becomes much more easier and simpler. Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
And that's what is there on the slide. Post, create, get, read, put, update, delete, delete, CRUD. Yes.
Yes.
So back to why Node.js. It provides a non-blocking input-output. So asynchronous IO is there. Usually when you send the request to the server, your server blocks the thread, right? That thread can no more receive any request. Node.js doesn't go for this behavior. It actually works on something called as event loop, which receives the request and puts it into the queue, and someone picks it up from there. So actually provides you the fire and forget mechanism. And that's why it becomes a non-blocking input output. Based on Google's V8 JavaScript engine, as I said, it's a single threaded model with the event loop coming in, which provides the queuing. Whatever request is coming in, it is queued, processed, and whenever response is there, that response is then sent back to the client because while keeping it into the queue, it actually records the information about which client or from where the request has been received. So whenever that request gets processed, the response automatically is sent back to that particular uh, original client only. Okay. Overall, more than 40,000 modules are present in Node.js. I'm not talking about the components or features. These are big modules which provide multiple things in one module itself. Then is supported by all the major platforms: Windows, Linux, Mac. Linux itself makes the coverage pretty wide because many systems are there which are based on Linux apart from Windows. And then the biggest advantage is that with Node.js, we get one single language for programming the front end as well as the back end. So the same team can actually be utilized for developing the front end and back end of the application. And then is driven by a very highly active community, which makes it easier for the developers who are working on Node.js based implementations and facing some issues. The moment they find out that, okay, we are not able to find the solution, probably they can post it into the community forum and then probably can look for the solution. Right? There are many people across the world who will be more than happy to help you out. Understand?
Yeah. So, Saket, when you say backend, so
Yeah.
the backend to convert into machine language, what exactly, how it goes? Like,
It is the
can you say?
JavaScript engine only. So
Hmm?
ultimately, when it is JavaScript, you will still have the JavaScript interpreter in place. But now, instead of depending on the web server's capability of providing that interpreter, Node.js has got its own environment, server environment, within which the JavaScript interpreter is already built in and which takes care of the binary conversion of your code.
Which
It
means
is
when
not
you
a
host,
compiler. It is
so
not a
when you,
compiler.
okay. So when you host an application which is implemented in Node.js in some
Yeah.
server, so Node.js has to be installed in that server? No, right?
Node.js is required to be installed on that server, yes. But it's a pretty lightweight one.
So unlike other softwares, which
Yeah.
this needs to be installed in that server, is it?
See, if you look at any of the server-side technology, you need to install that framework, right? Even if you're hosting .NET-based applications, you need .NET on the server. Similarly, Java-based applications require Java to be installed on the server. Runtime, I mean, not the complete framework. So likewise,
Yeah,
Node.js runtime is needed,
runtime is needed. Okay.
which provides you the interpreter. Make sense?
Okay, runtime is
You
like other. Yeah.
correct. So you may not
So
need complete Node.js. You just need the runtime.
so it will run as a JavaScript in the server side as well, like in front end.
Yes, absolutely. Outside the browser scope, because earlier JavaScript was running or
Only in the
was
browser.
capable of running only in the browser. But now
Yes.
Node.js makes it possible to run JavaScript code outside browser also. And Node.js provides a self-hosted environment as well. So if you want, Node.js itself as a plugin can be installed on a web server. If you want to go ahead with a web server only. But then that's not a dependency, hard dependency. Node.js can run on its own as well. Make
Okay.
sense?
Yeah. So earlier in C# also we used to hardcode the script and JavaScript and run,
Hmm.
that also. So it will replace
Yes,
such activities, right? Is
correct,
it?
correct, correct.
Okay.
So that makes it more dynamic, right?
Right. Right.
So what is Node.js based on our discussion so far? Node.js is more of an environment that provides asynchronous, non-blocking input-output framework,
Platform agnostic.
platform agnostic, written using C++ initially on the top of Google Chrome's version 8 JavaScript engine, means the JavaScript environment and interpreter were borrowed from the V8 engine of Google Chrome, right? Only the core implementation was done with C++. That's why I said only the initial implementation. Rest of the features were developed purely in JavaScript itself, right? With real life things, if we compare, it was like a Swiss Army knife for network related programming. So multiple tools in the same kit, which basically allows you to do many things. That's why it is being compared with Swiss Army knife. Can handle thousands of concurrent connections with minimal overhead on a single process. So you need to have only one single thread allotted to your Node.js engine. And because of the event loop based implementation, the queuing of the request is automatically done. And that allows thousands and millions of concurrent connections easily. And not too much of usage of CPU and memory is there at any point in time, right? And most importantly, Node.js is not a web framework. Also, Node.js is not a language. Language is JavaScript only for Node.js. It's not a web framework, means I don't use Node.js only to develop the web applications, right? I use Node.js to develop any server-side implementation, which can be consumed by a non-web application also, like a thick client Windows application created using WinForms or WPF, or a native mobile application as well. Even UWP apps on Windows also can consume the Node.js services. Clear? Now, why JavaScript? It's simple. It has been known for years by the developers. Very well adopted. On the client side, all the browsers support it, right? Implementation is quite simple. Syntax is quite simple. Then provide some specific features like friendly callbacks, no input output primitives required, right? And then ultimately having this JavaScript integrated on server side makes it possible to use one single language to rule the client side as well as server side implementation, right? So the JavaScript which runs in Node.js is actually called as SSJS, server side JavaScript. Using a known language makes it possible to learn the new stuff pretty quickly and adopt it pretty quickly, right? Yes.
Yes.
We are talking about the JavaScript engines, which does provide the JavaScript runtime or the interpreter, right? For that, each browser actually holds its own virtualized environment, which we also relate to virtual machine, so VM. Each browser has got its own VM. The names are already given on the screen. Firefox used SpiderMonkey, Internet Explorer used Chakra, Chrome used V8. Now Microsoft Edge, which is also based on the Chromium engine, is similar to Chrome in many aspects, so it also uses V8. Safari used JavaScript core. Opera browser used Kraken, right? Beside that, there were other virtual machines or virtual engines like Rhino, Standalone, etc., right? Which allowed little bit of JavaScript being executed outside the browser scope. They were actually implemented as the extensions or plugins to the operating system to provide some basic JavaScript functionality out of the browser. So different virtual machines were there, or we can say JavaScript engines were there for different browsers, which is the case even today, right? Node.js provided that virtual machine or virtual environment or the JavaScript engine of its own on the server side, where there is no involvement of the browser at all. Understand? Now, as we discussed earlier, the idea behind Node.js is to perform asynchronous programming on a single thread using the event loops or queuing mechanism instead of the classical multi-threaded processing, which usually most of the web servers do. That reduces the overhead, latency, and maximizes the scalability. You know how difficult and complex it is to work with multi-threaded programs, right? There are many situations where multi-threading becomes a headache. Yes or no?
Yes.
Can can cause bottlenecks also because number of threads which can be created on one machine are limited, and they might end up eating up all the machine resources, server resources. If we say that, okay, my implementation is single threaded only, I just need one thread, nothing more than that. And I'll take care of everything on that single thread only, which is always active. And because of the queuing mechanism, the scalability also increases. It scales horizontally instead of vertically, right? What is that? Horizontal scaling, vertical scaling. Vertical scaling means upgrading the capability of the resources by upgrading the machine. Horizontal scalability means I can have multiple server instances created. So if I feel that, okay, my single thread behavior now has been utilized up to its fullest extent, it cannot handle the load further, load in terms of the number of requests and number of users. I can just say, create one more server with the same environment, single threaded environment, and then have a load balancer installed in front where all the requests will land up, and the load balancer will check with the servers who is available, and the request will be relayed to that server, and the response will be prepared and collected by the load balancer from where it will be dispatched back to the client. Make sense? That's what we call as horizontal scalability. Got it? Yes.
Yes.
This is very, very ideal for the applications that create huge number of requests, but each request doesn't need too many computational resources. I mean CPU and RAM, right? I have number of requests which are huge, but all are lightweight requests. Very, very ideal for those kind of requirements. But at the same time, if you have very complex logic running, which involves heavy calculations, massive parallel computing, right? Lots of decision making, very complex decision making. Probably using Node.js for such implementations is not a good idea. There, probably you need to fall back to your conventional web server based technologies like Java or .NET, etc. And because of this event loop queuing mechanism, we have less problems with concurrency. Understand?
Yes.
This is Node.js event loop. Request coming in, getting queued in the event loop, which is being maintained by the single thread. There is a callback also registered, which will convey the response back to the original client, right? Whenever the operation gets completed, the callback will be triggered, which carries your response back to the client as discussed. Now, this operation can be anything related to file system or database or computation, or any two of them or all three of them as well. Now this helps you avoid the synchronous calls at all the costs, because synchronous code always blocks the event loop. So all the implementation will be based on the callbacks. Place the request. Along with the request, submit your callback function also, and forget. Whenever the operation is done, whenever the response is there, the callback method will automatically be called and the client will be notified. Instead of the client just waiting for the completion of that request, client can say, okay, I have played my part. I have given you the request. Now it is you who will notify me that whether this request was processed or not. Now, how it is done, how it is coded, depends on the application's need, and accordingly, it is made available. So it can be a notification feature in the application. It can be like sending the SMS or email to the client to see whether the work was done or not. Understood? So while originating the request from the client, you have to make sure you are placing the asynchronous request only. And that's where Ajax probably can help you a lot. Yes or no?
Yes.
Let's understand the difference between blocking and non-blocking. The first box is representing blocking action with synchronous IO. There is a thread. There is some file IO going on. The thread is waiting for the completion of the file IO operation. Once the file IO operation is completed, the thread further executes and completes. On the other hand, with asynchronous IO, the thread doesn't keep on waiting for the IO operation. It just keeps on processing the other things. Meanwhile, the file IO operation might be happening separately. Once it is completed with the callback, it just notifies the thread that, okay, I'm done. And there onwards, the thread picks it up and processes it and completes it. So there is no blocking in this case. Blocking of what? Blocking of threads. Clear?
Saket, so here we'll be
Yes.
using that async and await.
Of course, yes, because now ECMAScript 2015, I mean ECMAScript 5.0 and above. Basically, the async await has been introduced in ECMAScript as well, and JavaScript now is based completely on ECMAScript standard. So JavaScript also gets that async and await, and we can leverage from that. Make sense?
Yes.
Saket, one more
Yeah,
query. Means we have async and await means we means mostly our main thread is dependent required some data from the child thread. That time we wait for that and we proceed for that by reading that data. So in this case
correct.
also the same thing means we are synchronize the thread using async and await only means and or is there any
See,
other way?
it actually depends on your requirement. So even if you're awaiting a specific output from a thread, meanwhile you can keep on doing the other things at the same time, isn't it?
Yeah.
Your thread is not getting blocked. Thread is free, right? There is a
Yeah.
separate worker thread which is initiated over there, which keeps on doing its job and waits for the callback. So await will wait for the callback, right?
Yes.
And your main thread on which the request is originated will be free. It will be not blocked, right?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So this is the description of the previous slide. Blocking means read data from file, show data, do other tasks. So we have some JavaScript based code for that. Right, this is blocking action. On the other hand, if we go for non-blocking action, this is how it is going to be. Read data from file. When read data is completed, show the data, but meanwhile, you keep on doing the other tasks. So to show the data, there will be callback. This is what I was talking about. See, here I'm saying read this file, and there is a function being passed as a callback. So whenever data read operation is completed, data is available, process it, right? Meanwhile, the thread is allowed to continue for the further actions. Got my point?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so time for a break. We'll resume at 11:05 and we'll continue for the next stuff. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, I'm back. Shall we proceed?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm sure we are clear with the blocking, non-blocking actions and how Node.js is actually taking care of it. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So when actually we use this non-blocking behavior of Node.js, so here are some of the use cases. If we are trying to build some chatting, messaging program, or some real-time applications we are looking to build, intelligent proxies if we want to create, high concurrent applications we are looking to build. If we are looking to build some communication hubs, usually which is required with IoT most of the time, where millions of devices keep on generating the messages for the server. And then the coordinator applications, if we are looking to build, which are like providing some disconnected access to two applications with each other as an intermediator. Okay. So some of the use cases already mentioned in terms of type of applications. So in summary, what Node.js is for? We can build web applications with Node.js. We can create a WebSocket server. We can create an ad server, proxy server we can build, streaming server we can build, fast file upload client we can build, real-time data apps we can build, and wherever we are needing the high input output in terms of number of requests, we can use Node.js as well. Okay. So how exactly we get started? We need to go to this nodejs.org and then download the Node.js. Depending on which environment you are working with, the next few options will be applicable. tar.gz will be applicable if you are going with Mac OS or Linux or Sun OS, Sun Solaris, etc. For Windows, you have the MSI installer, or you do have the exe installer also. MSI installer seems to be easy and safe as well. Right, so we'll go ahead with that. So let's switch to the browser where we already have browsed nodejs.org. Let's click this option 18.18.0 LTS and the download immediately begins. So here you can see the animation. If I click on this, it says it's done. Probably some post download activities happen like virus scanning and all. Once that is done, you will be able to see your file like this. You can just click on that and the installer must begin. Okay, so the installer must start something like this. Completely wizard based installation, so it's easy. It says the setup wizard will install Node.js on your computer. Click next. Accept the license agreement, click next. Where to install Node.js to? This is the path which I want. Next. Any customization if you are looking for something which you want to include, something which you don't want to include, you can just make your selections accordingly, right? With these options. I'm going ahead with complete installation for now. Disk usage, I can see from here exactly how much space will be required. It's 138 MB only, which is required. Let's say next. I don't want additional tools over here for now. So I just click on next and install. So at this moment, basically you might need the administrative privileges. So the user account control prompt comes up. If you are already a local administrator on your machine, the moment you click on yes, it should just proceed. Otherwise, you need to get the administrator privileges, or some administrator needs to provide its login. Now, if Node.js was already installed on your machine, it will just get updated with the new installation.
Actually, I don't have the admin permission to install.
Okay, you can raise the ticket. Probably they will just help it out. And that should not take much time as such. Okay, just tell them that I need Node.js on my machine, and for that I need the admin privileges. So there are two things possible. One is they will provide you the credentials by taking your machine remote, or else they will just do the remote installation on your machine. Either way, it's good for us. Okay, because only for installation we need this. Post installation we don't require admin privileges anyhow. Okay.
Okay.
Finish, and the installation is done. Next question is, how do I verify the installation? Meanwhile, I can close the browser. To verify, just open the command prompt. If command prompt was already open, you have to close and reopen it. And here simply type node-v, where I'm looking for the node version to be displayed, and it displays the version and a blank line. That means node is first of all installed, and the version which is installed is this 18.18.0. If you're not getting this, if you're getting error, that means node installation is not complete. Understand?
Saket, for me,
Yes.
it's giving error. Let
Can you
me
share
share
your
my
screen?
screen. Is it visible now?
Yeah, it is. Put node-v. Okay, you have
Yes.
opened Node.js command line. Let's close this and open normal Windows command prompt. Type
Here
node
I should
space
write.
-v. Small v.
Okay,
It's
it's
showing, so it's done.
19.3. Okay.
It's done. Most likely you have installed the current version, not the LTS version.
Okay. Okay.
So that's fine as far as you are working with the, uh, uh, the practice applications and some research application. But if you are planning to use it for your production applications, don't go for this current version. Go for the LTS 18.18.0, which I have installed as well. So for
Right.
that,
Yes.
you have to once again download the correct installer and run the installer. It will automatically downgrade to the LTS version. Okay, so because the new version is there, it says that, okay, it will not continue. No worries. What you do is go to add remove programs and remove node first. Click on finish there, otherwise the installer will not start.
Okay. Okay. It is
Programs. Look for node. Select this, uninstall. Now, recently, there are a lot of changes they have made in the installer. So probably this is one of that. Earlier, running the installer was sufficient. It used to uninstall the newer version.
No, I cannot install. I believe it's from Quinnox only. They will uninstall it. It is asking for the password. So I will check with them and they will uninstall. Then
Yes,
I will.
yes. Yeah,
There is one way actually. We have self-service. Within that also we can install Node.js. You can try that one as well. Because I did just now. It installed. It get
yeah,
installed.
just guide him. Just guide Vivekanand.
Yeah, sure.
So should I click uninstall?
Yeah. You can uninstall this one.
Okay. So here it is asking, right?
Here also it is asking for admin to uninstall that one. I don't think. Just check once actually.
Okay, I need to check with the team, right? FMS team.
Yeah, but if you
But
go
there must be
down,
self-service portal, right? From where uninstallation also is possible, right?
just check means I don't know. I just installed through that one. So if
Yeah,
you
so
can,
uninstallation should be possible as well. Just go there, Vivekanand. You can
it's
cancel this, exit from it, go to self-service portal.
Which one? Self-service.
Yeah,
Yeah,
self-service portal.
Which one I am
Push.
not getting actually.
go to the taskbar. That arrow, right, on the mic logo is there.
Okay.
Yeah, from that there is a Quinnox endpoint management tool. Right click on that.
This one?
If you just click on the upper arrow, that one on task menu, just below that one.
Yes, I have already clicked.
I think its screen is stuck.
Yeah, can you reshare it, Vivekanand?
Stop for
Yes.
registration.
Okay. Now is it visible?
Yes.
Yes.
So
This
just yeah. Right now it's a Quinnox. The last one below.
Last one, Q.
Third row. Yeah. Right
Yeah,
click on this. Self-service
self-service
portal.
portal.
And it is having actually 18.18.0. Just check node on the search. Yeah, actually it is not installed through this. So just check once whether it is get overridden or not.
Yeah, if directly installed, it won't come up over here, right, Bhushan?
Yes. On my machine there was node was not there, so I just installed through this.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a fresh one, there is no issue at all. You can get it
Yes.
done
Yes.
from here.
Yes.
So this is required just to ensure that any unwanted installation is not done on the company machines. And every time we need not download from internet. We have our internal servers, application servers from where we can download and install, which are already scanned for viruses, right? So that makes your machine safe.
Yes.
So you say this is the best practice?
Yeah, so within the company environment, yes, that is the only practice I would say.
Okay.
If it is your personal machine, you can open it from the internet and just do it. You don't have any policies created there, right? You won't have any self-service portal also for personal machine.
No, I think it's not installing.
No, it take time. Okay, it stops, right? It's not
Yeah,
showing
most likely
install.
it is because the version 19 is there. So
Hmm.
maybe you can raise the request to your IT support team to help you uninstall the previous version, and then you can install it
Then,
from here.
right. Okay, I'll do that otherwise.
Once it is uninstalled, there will be no problem at all.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll share my screen. Okay, so the installation, I hope everyone understands. The generalized installation is directly from nodejs.org. You can download and install. If you are in the company environment, you have to follow what your organization has set up for you. So it could be self-service portal. Sometimes it is integrated with Windows Store. Sometimes you have a company portal separately created. So it depends. From organization to organization, the process might be different for secure environment, right? More or less, what we do, what we achieve is the same. We need the installation to complete successfully, right? Now the next thing is basically to ensure the npm version first of all, which npm version we have, and how do we initiate a project based on node. So for that, once again, go back to command line. First of all, here you say npm space -v. Just like node -v, we have npm space -v, small v, and it should show the npm version. Okay. Now I want my sample application to be created or set up. So for that, first of all, I need to go to the directory where I want to create my application. So let's say it is on OneDrive, desktop, Quinnox, demos. Here I have different demos. I will create one more folder here for Node.js. Switch to that directory, Node.js. Create one more folder for sample app. So I'll say sample app 1. Switch to that directory sample app 1. And there we need to say npm init.
It's npm install.
What package name you want to use over here? If you want any specific dependency to be added upfront. If not, you can just press enter.
Actually, Saket, we can install this globally, right? npm install -g.
Yeah, but that is for a specific project, specific package. If you just keep on pressing enter right now, what it will do is it will just create a file called as package.json for you. So if you see here, I just kept on pressing enter for each of the commands. And at the last, when it is saying, is this okay? Means the configuration summary is okay. I typed Y for yes and pressed enter again. And here, if I now issue the dir command, what I should see is package.json. So now this current folder represents a node project for me. I didn't install any package, so that's why I didn't use npm install. Got it?
Yeah.
Right. Now this package.json is the very important file because this contains the configuration of all of your package dependencies and the other environments and the compiler settings, etc. Right. So the main application configuration file for any Node.js based application is this package.json. I want to see this in action. So I hope you have VS Code installed. If not, again, you can install VS Code either by going to the visualstudio.com or by using the self-service portal. Self-service portal will be a better option because you will not require any privileges as such. Okay, so here I just type code, which will launch VS Code with the current directory automatically opened in the context. So here, if I click on this Explorer button, sorry, I should have said code dot. So I'll close this and say code dot. I want current directory to be opened up in that as well. So here you can see sample app1 is already open and package.json is there. So if you see what the content of package.json is, name for the application package, the version, the description, if any, if I can edit this here, if I want, this description will be what this application is all about. Main is basically talking about the entry point where the application will start running. And then there are some script configurations, like when I say start the application, what all commands needs to be executed. So if I say npm test, it will just go ahead and display this message error, no test specified. And then it will exit. Author. So this is just like who is the programmer for this particular program or this application, and then what kind of licensing scheme you want to use. So npm init basically initializes my folder as a node project by having package.json file added to it. I could have created this package.json file manually also. If I know the schema, I can just do that by hand. Make sense?
So for every project, we need to do like this. Create a
Yes, at the
folder.
beginning, yes. At the beginning, yes. npm init will be your start point. Okay.
So like I need to create a sample folder and go to that particular location.
Sample folder means some folder you have to create which will represent your project.
Yes.
And then within that you have to say npm init so that the package.json will be added and the folder will be considered as a Node.js application or project. Got it?
Yeah.
Now here to install different packages, basically the command is npm again, which will place the entry of the package being referred into your package.json file. Now this is very, very useful because while sharing your project with some of your colleague or some of your friend, you need not actually give the node modules folder also to him because it's usually quite big, right? So what you can do is accept node modules, you share everything and then ask that person to go to that project directory and issue the npm install command. It will automatically read the dependency graph within the package.json file and will restore all the modules. So behind scenes, npm actually is working as a package manager for you for the JavaScript based applications and just working the way how NuGet works for .NET. It automatically finds which packages are the dependency packages and which needs to be downloaded and installed and configured for the current project based on the contents of package.json. It will ignore those packages which are already downloaded, installed and configured. It will just download, install and configure the packages which are missing. Okay. So information it takes from package.json file only. If you want to install any package or the module, you just need to say npm install and the module name. This will be installing the module or the package for the current project only. If you want, or if you know that this package is something which I require for